Imagine this. You're scrolling through your phone late at night. The room is dim, your body is heavy, but your mind is restless. A picture flashes across the screen. Someone your age smiling with a new car, a bigger house, a sharper jawline, a body that seems sculpted by gods. You pause, staring at it, as if that still image has suddenly rearranged the architecture of your entire being. For a moment you forget yourself. Your own life, your accomplishments, your unique struggles, all of it evaporates into a silent fog. What remains is a gnawing thought, subtle but sharp. They are ahead. I am behind. You tell yourself it's just harmless scrolling, just fleeting images in an endless stream. Yet deep inside, something feels unsettled, as if an invisible scale has just tipped against you. You measure your life by someone else's yardstick, and no matter the outcome, you're diminished. Why? Why does another person's existence, someone you may not even know, suddenly have the power to unsettle your entire sense of self? Here lies the paradox. In theory, you know that comparison is irrational. You've heard the advice. Focus on yourself, stop comparing, run your own race. But in practice, you can't stop. None of us can. From the moment we open our eyes in childhood, we are already looking outward, scanning faces for approval, gauging reactions, trying to measure our worth through another's gaze. It's as if comparison is stitched into the very fabric of human consciousness. But why? Consider this unsettling truth. You could be living the most peaceful day of your life, sipping tea by the window, completely content, until you learn that someone else your age has just achieved something extraordinary. Instantly, peace turns to poison. What was enough is no longer enough. What felt whole now feels lacking. The yardstick has shifted, not because your life changed, but because theirs did. Doesn't that strike you as strange? That your sense of value is so fragile, so contingent, that it can be undone not by tragedy, but by the mere existence of someone else's success. Think about the absurdity. You can be proud of a small achievement until you see another person who has gone further. You can be happy with your partner until you glimpse someone seemingly more attractive. You can be content with your own body until you scroll past an idealized version of flesh sculpted by filters. Your reality is not your own. It bends, warps, and fractures under the weight of comparisons. And yet, here's the darker twist. The people you compare yourself to are likely doing the exact same thing with someone else. The person you envy envies another. The person you think has made it secretly feels inadequate beside someone even further ahead. It is an endless chain, a hall of mirrors where no one escapes whole. Everyone is both idol and victim, both admired and diminished. So ask yourself, what is really happening when you compare? Are you measuring truth, or are you trapping yourself in a psychological illusion, a mirage that forever recedes the closer you chase it? You might argue, but comparison pushes us to improve, doesn't it? Without it, would we ever strive for more? True. Competition has fueled art, science, survival itself. But here's the contradiction that gnaws beneath the surface. Comparison is both the fire that drives human progress and the acid that corrodes human contentment. You are torn between two forces, ambition and despair, aspiration and inadequacy. And maybe this is the deeper tragedy. You never compare yourself to the whole of another person's life. You compare fragments, their highlight reel against your behind the scenes, their mask against your nakedness, their triumph against your hidden wounds. You compare without fairness, without context, without truth. And yet, the emotional pain feels real, sometimes more real than reality itself. But let me ask you, if the ladder of comparison never ends, if every rung climbed only reveals another above it, where does it leave you? Do you spend your life climbing, gasping for air, chasing phantoms of success, always behind, never enough? Or is there another way? Hold that thought, because to answer it, we must peel back the skin of this restless habit and see what lies underneath. We must confront not just the act of comparison, but the roots of why it holds us so tightly, why even the strongest minds cannot escape it. And this is where the truth begins to sting. Why does comparison cling to us like a shadow we cannot outrun? Why, despite knowing its futility, do we return to it again and again, as though compelled by an unseen hand? To answer, we must descend beneath the surface, into the deeper layers of psychology and philosophy, into the subterranean chambers where desire, ego, and identity are born. Let's begin with the most primal truth. Human beings are not solitary creatures. We are social animals, wired for survival in tribes, and in that ancient struggle, comparison was not vanity, it was survival. Thousands of years ago, to fall behind meant danger, even death. If another gathered more food, built stronger shelter, gained higher status within the tribe, your very existence was at risk. Comparison then was a compass, alerting you to where you stood, whether you were safe or vulnerable. But what once kept you alive now keeps you enslaved. The primitive instinct survives, even though the dangers have changed. You are no longer comparing spears or harvests, but salaries, abs, followers, lifestyles. Your nervous system has not caught up to civilization's illusion. It reacts to another's success as if your life itself is threatened, as though their gain is your loss, their rise your fall. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." He understood what most of us cannot bear to admit, that comparison is not really about others at all. It is about our inability to sit fully with ourselves, to accept your own imperfections, your limitations, your failures, without the narcotic of another's image to define you. That is terrifying. And so you compare. Because in comparison, there is distraction. There is a game to play, a ladder to climb. Anything to avoid the silence of confronting your own raw self. But Jung was not alone in this recognition. Nietzsche, in his searing critique of modern man, pointed to the corrosive power of envy as the engine of resentment. He saw comparison not as harmless self-measurement, but as a poison that weakens the spirit. When you measure yourself against another, you risk shrinking your own will, turning it outward, giving it over to the weight of others' opinions. Nietzsche urged a radical turn inward, to create your own values, to sculpt your life like an artist sculpts stone, instead of forever imitating another's design. And yet, the problem runs even deeper. Arthur Schopenhauer, grim chronicler of human suffering, believed that life itself is restless striving, endless desire that can never be fulfilled. For him, comparison was not an accident, but an inevitable expression of the will, the insatiable drive within us to seek, to want, to crave. In this sense, comparison is not a glitch in human psychology, it is the very operating system. You don't just compare because society conditions you. You compare because your nature itself is restless, forever reaching outward. But here is the twist. Society amplifies what nature begins. Modern culture has taken this primal reflex and weaponized it into a system of control. Aldous Huxley warned of a world where people would come to love their own servitude, distracted by endless pleasure, endless images, endless ideals. And is that not where we live now? Every billboard, every commercial, every curated feed screams, "Look, compare, measure yourself against this standard." The system thrives on your insecurity, because an insecure mind is a consuming mind. A restless identity is a profitable identity. Consider the design of social media itself. It is not neutral, it is engineered deliberately to keep you comparing. The like button, the follower count, the endless scroll, these are not accidental features, they are psychological levers, pulling at your ancient instincts. You think you are choosing to compare, but in truth, the architecture of the digital world is choosing for you, exploiting the circuitry of your brain for profit. Comparison has become industrialized. And what of philosophy's answer to this? Sartre, the existentialist, might remind you that the gaze of the other is inescapable. To be human is to exist in a web of other people's eyes. You are always, in some sense, being seen, being measured, even if silently. His concept of the look describes that unsettling awareness when you realize another person is perceiving you. In that instant, you become an object, no longer the free subject of your own narrative, and so you bend, adjust, conform, compare. It is not just psychology, It is the structure of existence itself. But here lies the great paradox that philosophy forces upon us. Comparison is both the mark of our humanity and the source of our torment. Without it, we would not strive, create, or evolve. With it, we are never at rest. Every victory is fleeting, every satisfaction poisoned by the sight of someone else who has gone further. So what does this mean for you? It means that your restless comparisons are not trivial weaknesses. They are symptoms of a deeper truth, that human beings are trapped between two forces, our biological inheritance and our cultural conditioning. On one side, evolution whispers, compete, measure, survive. On the other, society shouts, consume, envy, want more. You are pulled apart, torn between instincts and illusions, between survival and slavery. And maybe this is why the problem feels so inescapable, because it is not merely in your head, it is in your history, your nature, your very being. You compare not because you are weak, but because you are human. And yet to remain human in this way is to remain unfree. The question is, do you accept this fate? Do you resign yourself to being forever measured in another's shadow? Or do you dare to confront the chains, to break them, to see what lies beyond this ancient reflex? For that we must turn to the unseen consequences, because the danger is not simply that you compare, it is what comparison quietly does to you, to your relationships, to your society. And unless you see it clearly, you may never realize how deep the damage runs. You think comparison is just a private irritation, a little sting of envy here and there, nothing serious. But what if I told you it's shaping your reality in ways far more destructive than you realize? What if comparison is silently rewriting the story of your life, twisting how you see yourself, how you see others, and even how you see the world? Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You look at yourself, but the reflection shifts depending on who walked past you last. If they were taller, suddenly you appear small. If they were richer, suddenly you appear poor. If they were more successful, suddenly you appear mediocre. The mirror is not showing you truth. It is showing you distortion. That's what comparison does. It infects perception itself. You stop seeing who you are, and you only see who you are not. And this distortion comes at a cost, not just to your self-esteem, but to your very capacity for joy. Neuroscience reveals that the brain's reward system, the dopamine circuits that fire when we achieve something, are profoundly sensitive to relative status. You don't just want success, you want more success than the person next to you. A raise feels good until you discover your colleague's is higher. A compliment feels sweet until you hear someone else praised more loudly. The brain, wired for survival in ancient tribes, interprets every upward comparison as a threat, reducing pleasure and fueling anxiety. This is why your victories so often feel hollow. The moment you climb one mountain, you glance sideways, notice another climber higher, and instantly your triumph deflates. This isn't laziness or ingratitude, it's wiring. Comparison robs your brain of satisfaction, replacing it with an itch that can never be scratched. But the consequences go beyond individual psychology. Comparison corrodes relationships. Instead of seeing others as companions, you see them as competitors. Friendships become silent battlegrounds, each smile hiding envy, each story of success shadowed by resentment. How many times have you pretended to celebrate someone else while secretly feeling smaller in their light? How often have you withheld your true struggles because you feared appearing less than? In a culture saturated with comparison, intimacy dies, replaced by performance. Social media accelerates this corrosion. Scroll after scroll, you consume an endless theater of curated lives, each image a carefully staged illusion of success, beauty, or happiness. You know it's filtered, you know it's selective, and yet your emotions don't care. Your subconscious absorbs the message. Everyone else is thriving. You are not. This illusion creates what psychologists call relative deprivation, a state where you feel deprived not because you lack essentials, but because someone else appears to have more. It doesn't matter that you're safe, fed, loved. The comparison convinces you that you're failing. Now extend this beyond individuals to entire societies. What happens when billions of people are constantly comparing, constantly dissatisfied. You get economies built on insecurity. Advertising thrives by stoking envy, reminding you of what you don't have, showing you people who appear happier, healthier, wealthier because of some product. Politicians manipulate status anxiety, fueling division by reminding one group how another group is ahead. Entire industries survive not by satisfying needs, but by manufacturing comparisons. This is the hidden machinery of modern life. Your dissatisfaction isn't an accident, it's a resource. Companies harvest it, politicians weaponize it, and platforms monetize it. And the more you compare, the more the system wins. You are not simply comparing, you are being compared, measured, manipulated. But here is perhaps the most insidious consequence. Comparison weakens identity itself. When you live by measuring yourself against others, who are you really? Are you the one who loved to paint as a child, or are you only the one who paints worse than her? Are you the one who dreamed of writing, or the one who writes less than him? Slowly, your essence is eroded. You cease to be yourself and become merely the sum of your comparisons. This is why so many feel lost, even surrounded by abundance. You might have achievements, relationships, talents, but if they are constantly refracted through the lens of someone else's life, they never feel like enough. Your existence becomes conditional, always one step away from validity. And what is more tragic than living as a shadow of yourself, never standing fully in your own light? Let's take this deeper. When comparison dominates, even morality is warped. You stop asking, is this right? And begin asking, does this make me look better than them? You stop asking, what do I value? And start asking, what will they admire? In this way, comparison becomes not just a thief of joy, but a thief of authenticity. It hijacks your choices, your values, your destiny. You no longer live your life, you perform it, endlessly for invisible judges who are themselves comparing endlessly to others. Do you see the trap? Comparison is not simply an internal weakness, it is a cultural epidemic, a spiritual parasite. It drains meaning from victories, poisons relationships, feeds industries of manipulation, and erodes the very core of who you are. And yet, even now, part of you might cling to it. Part of you believes comparison is necessary, that without it you would drift aimlessly without direction, that without it you would lose the fire to strive, to grow, to matter. But is that true? Or is that another illusion, another whisper from the system that profits off your self-doubt? This is the question we must face now, because the moment you see the consequences clearly, you cannot unsee them. The only choice left is rebellion, to rise against this ancient reflex, to break the cycle, to reclaim a way of living not dictated by the shadows of others. The rebellion begins here. Imagine a prisoner who has lived in chains so long he mistakes them for jewelry. Every clink of iron against his wrist feels familiar, even comforting. When someone offers to remove the shackles, he hesitates, because who would he be without them? This is the state of comparison in your life. You've worn it so long it feels natural. To imagine living without it seems not only difficult but impossible. And yet, rebellion is possible. But it requires a radical shift in perspective, one that may unsettle you at first because it demands you abandon the very metric you've used to measure your worth for as long as you can remember. To break free is not simply to stop comparing, because you cannot stop instincts that have been carved into human nature over millennia. To break free is to rewire how you see the game itself. Let's start with the first act of rebellion, seeing clearly. Comparison thrives in the shadows, in the unexamined habits of thought. The moment you drag it into the light, when you notice, I am comparing again, it begins to lose its grip. You become the observer instead of the prisoner. Viktor Frankl, survivor of the concentration camps, once wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and that space is your doorway to freedom. You may not stop the initial sting of comparison, but you can choose how to respond to it." The second act of rebellion, turning inward. Nietzsche challenged humanity to move beyond herd mentality and create values of its own. This is where liberation lies. Ask yourself, What do I actually want, apart from what the world tells me to want? Do you desire that career because it fulfills you, or because it looks impressive in comparison to others? Do you want that body because it feels healthy, or because you crave validation in the mirror of strangers' eyes? Every time you peel away external standards and listen for the faint but persistent voice of your own will, you take back ground that comparison has stolen. The third act of rebellion: radical acceptance. Jung was right. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is clarity. When you embrace your limits, your scars, your failures, you strip comparison of its weapon. What can be used against you if you no longer hide from yourself? Think of Marcus Aurelius, who, as Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." In the face of mortality, what meaning is there in comparing fleeting images of success? Acceptance reconnects you to what is essential, the brief, unrepeatable miracle of your own existence. But rebellion is not only internal. There are practical strategies too. Curate your environment. If social media chains you to comparison, step back. Delete apps, limit usage, or transform your feed into one that inspires rather than corrodes. Just as a garden grows only what you plant, your mind flourishes or withers according to the images you consume. Practice gratitude as weaponry. Gratitude is not a cliché, it is an antidote. Each time you name what you have, you remind the brain that not all value is relative. Gratitude anchors you to the present, protecting you from the mirage of endless ladders. Compete with yourself, not others. Track progress in private. Celebrate growth from where you were yesterday, not from where someone else is today. When the yardstick is self-reflection, no one can steal your joy. And then, perhaps the boldest act of all, transform comparison into admiration. Instead of seeing others' success as a threat, see it as evidence of what is possible. If someone else has achieved greatness, it does not diminish you. It expands the horizon of human potential. Imagine comparison not as a ladder where someone above pushes you down, but as a torch passed along a line of travelers, each illuminating the way for the next. History is full of those who broke free from the tyranny of comparison. Socrates, who walked barefoot through Athens, unmoved by the wealth of others, declaring, "How many things I can do without." Diogenes, who lived in a barrel, mocking Alexander the Great's power with the freedom of his simplicity. Or the mystics who abandoned worldly measures altogether, finding joy not in the eyes of others, but in union with something greater than themselves. Each, in their own way, rebelled. Each refused to let another's shadow define their light. But let's not romanticize rebellion. It is not easy. To reject comparison is to walk against the current of culture. It means you may be misunderstood, judged, even ridiculed. People will not understand why you no longer play the same game. And yet, that is the very sign you are on the right path, because freedom is not conformity, it is courage. Ask yourself now, what would your life look like if you stopped performing it for invisible judges? If you chose values that were yours alone? If you could look at another's success and feel neither smaller nor threatened, but simply free? That is not fantasy. That is possible. But only if you dare the rebellion. And rebellion is not a single act. It is daily quiet resistance. Every time you notice comparison and choose awareness, you rebel. Every time you define success on your own terms, you rebel. Every time you embrace your imperfect self without shame, you rebel. And slowly the chains grow lighter, until one day you realize they were never unbreakable. They were only illusions, held in place by belief. But even rebellion has its limits, because beneath it lies a deeper truth, one that may shock you. A truth that reveals not only how to break free from comparison, but why you were trapped in it in the first place. This truth is not just psychological, it is existential. It forces you to confront the very ground of your being, and that truth is where we must go next. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast desert at night. The horizon is endless, the stars infinite, and you, a fragile being, are caught in between. You've spent your whole life comparing yourself, measuring footprints in the sand, trying to walk faster than others, trying to leave deeper marks. But now, under the silent immensity of the sky, you realize something unsettling. All footprints vanish. The wind erases them, the desert remains, and the stars continue burning, indifferent. What does this mean? It means the ultimate truth about comparison is this. You were never supposed to win the game, because the game itself is an illusion. Here's the paradox. Comparison thrives on the assumption that life is a race, that existence is a contest where someone must be ahead and someone behind. But who drew the track? Who decided that faster, higher, richer, prettier means better? You didn't. The people you envy didn't. The rules were never written in the fabric of existence. They were invented, imposed, accepted, and yet you've spent years bowing to them, as though they were laws of gravity. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Read that again. The privilege of a lifetime is not to outshine others, not to climb higher on invisible ladders, not to beat the next person. It is to become yourself. In that light, comparison is not only futile, it is a betrayal of your very purpose. Each time you measure your worth by another, you abandon the singular life you were meant to live, the path no one else can walk. Think of it this way. No two snowflakes are alike, yet none is better or worse. No two trees grow in the same shape, yet each reaches toward the sun in its own way. Only humans, with our restless minds, carve hierarchies into the infinite variety of existence, and in doing so, we suffer. The ultimate truth, then, is not merely to rebel against comparison, but to see through it, to recognize it as a mirage. Once you see it clearly, it loses its power. You realize there is no race, there is no ladder, there is no finish line, there is only life, yours unrepeatable, irreplaceable, fleeting. But here's the uncomfortable part. If there is no race, if there is no ladder, then there are no excuses either. You cannot hide behind envy or resentment, cannot blame your unhappiness on being behind. What remains is terrifying freedom. Sartre was right when he said, "Man is condemned to be free." You cannot escape responsibility for your own existence. You must choose who to become, without the comfort of comparison to guide you. This is why so many cling to the game. It is painful, but familiar. To abandon it feels like stepping off a cliff into nothingness. And yet, that nothingness is where authentic life begins. Schopenhauer believed life is suffering, driven by endless desire. He saw comparison as inevitable, but his bleakness is only half the story. Yes, desire never ends, but perhaps that is precisely why you must step outside the cycle. You cannot escape desire itself, but you can refuse to measure it against others. You can redirect it inward, channel it toward your own creation, your own becoming. In that shift, suffering transforms into meaning. Nietzsche called this the Übermensch, the higher self, not defined by society's herd values, but by self-created ones. The person who does not ask, "How do I compare?" but "What can I create? What beauty, what truth, what strength can I bring into existence simply because it is mine to bring?" This is not arrogance. This is liberation. And yet, perhaps the deepest realization is even simpler. Comparison dissolves when you truly confront mortality. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You could leave life right now." Imagine that. Imagine death pressing close, whispering that time is short. In that light, does it matter who has more likes, more titles, more fleeting applause? Would you spend your final moments tallying invisible scores, or would you want to know you lived fully, authentically, as yourself? Death strips away the illusion. In its shadow, the race disappears. All that remains is the raw question, did I live my life, or did I spend it watching others live theirs? And so, here is the final, most powerful realization. The cure to comparison is not self-improvement, not higher achievement, not even rebellion against the system. It is radical presence. To live so fully in your own life that others' shadows cannot touch you. To taste your morning coffee as if no one else exists. To write your story not for applause but for truth, to love without performance, to create without judgment, to breathe without reference to anyone else's rhythm. This does not mean you will never compare again. You will. You are human. But each time the reflex arises, you can smile at it, see it for what it is, a phantom, a habit, an echo of ancient survival, and then return to the only thing that is real, this moment, this breath, this singular life. Look again at the desert. The footprints vanish. The wind erases them all. In the end, no one is ahead, no one behind. There is only the vast silence of existence, and the question of how you choose to walk while you are here. Will you spend it chasing shadows, or will you dare to live your own light? The choice, terrifying and beautiful, is yours alone.